Hi, WhiskyJason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American in Germany tasting rare and exotic whiskey. Hold on to your horses. I have two horses. 26-year-old Kentucky Bourbon distilled in the year 1950. Exclusively for Mustang fans. Now, the first time I looked at this bottle, I thought, Mustang, Ford Mustangs. And I went, where's the Ford emblem? Huh. And then I went online, I did a little bit of research, and I found out that this was made for the very first producer of blue jeans outside of the United States. That was Albert and his son Heiner Ziefranek in Künzelsau, Deutschland, which is Germany. And so he, for some type of company anniversary, actually decided to make a bottling for Germany of this thing called Two Horses, because that was the name of his brand, Mustangs, Two Horses, blah, blah, blah. So what I have here is something that a friend of mine, Alex, he has it in his collection. Alex has over 1,000 bottles in his collection. It's massive. It's mouth-watering. It's exciting. All of the bottles basically are open, and every once in a while he invites some friends over to try things like that. Now, he showed this to me since he knew that I liked bourbon. He said, have you ever had a 26-year-old bourbon? I said, yeah, actually I have. He went, what? I said, yeah, I was in Heaven Hill Distillery there in Kentucky, and they actually pulled out a bad bourbon that the master distiller said, nah, we're not going to sell. But at the connoisseur tasting, you can actually try it. And I have, and so I can say that I've actually tried a 26-year-old bourbon before. The second one. Now, the second thing, the other thing, he said, but was it from 1950? And I said, no. I have never, ever had a bourbon out from the year 1950. I've had some Jim Beam from the 60s. I've had some Wild Turkey from the 70s. I've tried quite a few different things then from the 80s and then, of course, 90s and so on. But I've never had something from the 1950s. To put this into perspective, my mother, see these gray hair? This gray hair here? My mother was born after this was distilled. Now, my family has a tradition or the tendency to get kids at a fairly young age. My son has not yet had any children, but he could. I had two children at the time of his age, so this could be actually 4 generations. 1950, we have 2018 at the moment, so 68 years ago this was distilled. That's amazing. Think of all the things that have changed since the year 1950, and now I get to try something that actually was produced back then. We have no idea where this was produced, someplace in Kentucky. We have no idea how long or where it stayed. We do know it 26 years. And I do know that it actually went on eBay a couple of years ago for 80 euros, 78 euros, something like that. So it's one of these collector items. It's one of these things where some of your friends might say, hey, look, I have an Excalibur. It's a 40-year-old Scotch. Blended Scotch or so on, or I can pull out my Cooper's Choice, which is a 50-year-old single grain, and they say, well, yeah, but when was it distilled? Well, 50 years ago. When was that? That was like 1968. And I was like, mine was distilled 1950. And you can really brag with this bottle, all right? Now, to be very, very honest, it's nothing special. The nose, fairly weak, a little bit watery, and by the way, nowhere on the bottle does it give any type of reference to the ABV. I'm just going to assume, make an ass of you and me, I'm going to assume that is 40%. It's fairly weak. There's a little bit of butterscotch, there's a little bit of caramel, there's a little bit of wood, there's a little bit even of like a sesame oil, as well as a tiny little bit here of, wait a second, white toast bread. So, those are not normal tasting notes I give to a bourbon. So let's try this. 1950, 68 years ago, this little fine drop was produced. 26 years old in the cask. Just one little comparison here. All right, it doesn't look that bad if you take a look at the color, but then I'm just going to pull out here a Michter's a rye. Look at that color. It's amazing. I'm even going to be a little bit more cheeky here. Take a look at this one. Now I know this is lighter, but this is a 24-month-old single malt from Germany, and this here is the 26-year-old. Now there's a difference, but 24 months, 26 years. This should have been a lot darker, in my personal opinion. If I pulled up my Stag Junior, if I pulled up my Stag, a George T. Stag, or anything else with an age statement of 18 plus years, it looks like Coca-Cola, and this doesn't. It's a very, very golden hue straw color. All right, enough complaining. Oh, yeah. So it comes in at a very watery level. Then it goes up, and you have a little bit more of the typical bourbon. So you get a little bit of the cotton candy. You get a little bit of a light pecan, not a heavy pecan, a very light pecan. You get a little bit of the caramel and the butterscotch, and a little bit of the toasted oak. What I don't get is the tobacco leaves. I don't get the nice leather. I don't get the wonderful, wonderful bouquet in my mouth of anything like that. Then the fire kicks in a little bit. It's a little bit hot. I'm gonna guess it's like 3. I don't. It's 26 years in the cask, but it tastes like a 3 to 4 year old bourbon. It really doesn't have that smooth, woody oakiness that I really, really enjoy. As my control whiskey, I just pulled out a Bullet 10-year-old. So nice. It's a wonderful, wonderful Four Roses. Mmm. Mmm. It's got a fullness. It's got a sweetness. It's got a even at the end, it's got a nice woodiness. It's just the complete package. And this is like if you have a pie chart, you have like a third. It just doesn't give you everything you want and you need. Pales in comparison. Wow. Wow, it really does. Now, I'm just going to give this like a C minus. This bottle is not about the content. Now, the thing that I really must admit that I'm proud of with my friend, acquaintance, as the Germans would say, Alex, is his bottles are open. He's not collecting as a collector. They're not going to be on the secondary market one day. He actually wants to drink his whiskey with his friends, even though 1,000 bottles would be impossible for one person to drink probably in his own entire lifetime. But yet, it's there to be drunk. And that's what I think is a very, very special and very, very important thing. And without even blinking, he said, Jason, you're a bourbon guy. Here, you want a sample? And I was like, oh, yes, sir. And that's so fine of him. Thank you very much once again. Value for money. Imagine you could buy the bottle again for 80 euros. If you want to have the whiskey, I'm going to give it like a D+. If you want bragging rights, I'm going to go for a B+. How in the world are you going to find a bottle of whiskey from the year 1950 for 80 euros, transfers into less than $100 any place? A 26-year-old bourbon on top of that. Now, I know that the juice in there is not really something to write home about, but just having that bottle, just showing off the bottle, 1950, big letters, 26 years old, right on the front, that's something to write home about. All right, WhiskyJason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American in Germany tasting rare and exotic whiskey. This whiskey was produced for a jeans manufacturer over here with the brand name Mustang, the very first jeans made outside of the United States of America, the good old USA. The Germans were the copycats back there in the 1970s, as well as the Japanese, and we caught up in Germany. At least that's where I am, and now jeans in the States are not actually the in thing. Wow. All right, it's all about whiskey. Thank you very much for watching. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays are my reviews. All right, like and subscribe and tell others about this crazy guy over here in Europe tasting rare and exotic whiskeys. Bye bye.